So sometimes your typical oils, waxes, varnishes, polyurethanes and lacquers can get a little bit boring and a little bit repetitive, but the last thing you want to do is get to the end of a beautiful project and mess it all up by applying a terrible finish at the end of it. So in this video series, I'm going to be experimenting with various experimental and alternative wood finishes to see how they turn out at the end of it. And we're going to start things off with gilding, but not only that, we're going to be applying a chemical to the finished product to make it bring out all these colours and effects and things like that, and it should look rather beautiful. So let's get going. Now it's worth saying in this video series that I have done some of these finishes before, gilding being one of them, but then there will be other finishes that I have never tried before and I have no idea what to expect. So saying that I've done gilding this before, I want to also clarify that I am no expert in this. My method is very much slapdash and it looks alright at the end of it, but there is almost certainly better methods of doing it, so I'd recommend researching them yourselves. So to give you an idea of what we're going for here, I've got this vase that I made, when was this? About 4 or 5 years ago, and this is actually made from pallet wood, would you believe? So what I did was carved it all out, stuck it together, and then gilded the outside in copper leaf. And copper leaf, let me just get one out, is, oh, there you go, one just fell on the floor. Copper leaf is this incredibly thin sheets of metal that you apply to a surface to basically give it a metallic effect. Now you can get this in copper, you can get it in aluminium, silver, gold is obviously the most common one. But in this video, we're going to be messing around with both copper and silver because you can get really nice effects of them when you apply this chemical to them, which is what I did to this vase. It's made it go sort of blue, purple, black. It looks absolutely stunning, especially considering that what hides under this is pallet wood. So it kind of instantly demonstrates what you can do with this finish. So what we're going to be working on here is just a simple plywood sample. And what is very important in this one, which I didn't do too well on the vase, is making sure the surface below is perfectly smooth, because these metal leaves, they're incredibly thin, so they're going to follow any small contours you've got on here. But not only that, because they're shiny, they're going to emphasize any small errors you've got in here. So we've got some very fine knife lines here. They're going to be very distinct as soon as you apply metal leaf to here. So we need to make sure it's very pristine. So I've got 120 grit on this sanding block and we're going to smoothen it out. Right, so I've taken that to 180 grit, which is smooth enough. You could probably take it higher just to really make sure you've got no sanding marks in there. But what's really important now is to make sure there's no dust around. So we're just going to vac it up real quick. Okay, so now all that surface is lovely, smooth and sanded and everything like that, we need to think about sealing it, because the adhesive we use on here isn't actually a glue or anything like that, it's actually an oil. So what we don't want to happen is for the oil to soak into it and therefore lose all of its sticky properties. We actually want it to sit on top of it. So to seal this, you can use a lot of things really. You can use paint, which I quite like to use because if any of the metal leaf falls off or something like that, as it wears through, it gives quite a nice vibrant colour underneath. Or if you don't want that to happen, you just want to keep it as bare wood beneath, you could use a sanding sealer. So this is cellulose sanding sealer. There's all manner of things you can use, but basically what you're looking to do at this point is just seal the wood pores to make sure that that oil can't soak into it. So we're going to use this cellulose to start with. And then between each of these coats, to make sure that surface stays as smooth as possible, we're going to knock it down with 4-aught steel wool to make sure we get rid of any of those little bumps and stuff left over and keep it nice and smooth. So when you're doing this, just be careful that you don't sand through the previous layer of sanding sealer, of course, and if you're doing this with paint, then just make sure that you're sanding out all of those brush marks and things like that. Smooth as possible is what we're aiming for here, both to touch and to the eye. Okay, then we're going to do a build up of like 2 or 3 coats just to make sure that it is properly sealed on there. Alright, so now this has got 3 layers of sealer on it. Just going to lightly brush over it with my steel wool to make sure there's no little nibbly bits on there, and obviously just wipe off the excess if there is any. so now we have a lovely smooth sealed surface and we're ready to apply the adhesive to this. So like I said earlier, the adhesive we use for this is actually an oil sort of thing, and it comes under the name Size. And on here, this one's called 3 Hour Gold Size. Ignore the gold bit. It can be any material as long as it's a metal leaf. The bit we're focusing on here is the 3 hour bit. So what does that mean? In this case, 3 hours means that from when I apply this adhesive onto here, I have to wait 3 hours before applying any metal leaf to that surface to allow this adhesive to tack up on here, and then you need to wait a further 3 hours for it to dry fully. So overall, a 3 hour size would actually take 6 hours to dry. The first 3 hours waiting for it to tack up, the following 3 hours waiting for it to dry on there. You can get this in 1 hour size, you can get this in 12 hour, 24 hour. It all depends on the complexity of the surface you're working on. So something like this, I could get away with a 1 hour gold size. I apply it, wait for an hour for it to tack up, then apply the leaf on here, and then wait for another hour, and then I can start doing stuff with it because that size will be fully dried. Whereas if I was doing an entire ceiling or a statue or whatever you want to gild, if I was to use a 1 hour size for that, by the time you've even got to the end of applying the size on there, the bit that you started with is going to tack up and you're going to be chasing your tail and it's going to be a bit of a mad rush. In that case, it would be better to use a 12 hour size or a 24 hour size. So you apply it on there, wait 12 hours, then you could apply the leaf on there and then wait a further 12 hours for it to dry. So you're not rushing as much and you can do the job properly. So it all depends. I got the 3 hour size because it's kind of a good middle ground for the stuff that I'm likely to be doing in the future. So I've poured some of it into this little container here and we're going to apply it to the surface. Now when you do this, you want it to be very, very thin on here. You don't want any pools or clumps or anything in there. Very, very nice and smooth because we want it to dry evenly, and if there's any wet patches and things like that, that is going to show through on the final leaf. Now it's worth saying that this was a method of finishing that I learned from David Marks through a DVD that he sells. David's name popped up quite a lot in some of Mark Spagnolo or the Wood Whisperer's earlier videos. I know he's quite a big inspiration for him. So I kind of went to look at his work, saw that he did loads of this gilding and chemicals stuff and thought it looked pretty cool, and then found out that David sold a DVD showing you how to do it. So I'll put a link to that in the description. I will warn you, it's very, very outdated, but it has all the information in there and I learned quite a lot from it. We're going right to the corners on here. And also when you're doing this, make sure that none of the bristles from the brush have fallen off on here as well, because that will be very, very visible once you've got that highly reflective surface on there. So there we go, we've got the size applied to that surface, and as I said, because we've used 3 hour size, we need to now wait 3 hours for this to tack up. And it's important at this point to make sure you put this in an area where there's going to be no dust or anything that falls onto here, because again, it's going to be very, very prominent if you got stuff settling on there and sticking to this between now and when you go to apply the leaf. So I'm going to put it in this little cubby hole here. It's not anything perfect, but it's certainly going to prevent any dust from falling onto the top of it like that, or at least reduce it. We'll have to see. Right, so it's now been 3 hours and this stuff should have tacked up now. So the way to check it, kind of makes a squeaky sound when you rub your finger on it or knuckle. So that's when you know it's tacked up. It kind of feels like, well, it actually feels like the back of sellotape, to be honest. So let's get a metal leaf applied to this. So as far as I'm aware, there are two forms of metal leaf you can buy. You can either buy them loose, like I showed you earlier. So it's all sort of sold in a booklet like this, and then you can literally just take the leaves out like that. There's no adhesion to the paper below. And there's definitely better ways of picking them up other than using your fingers. But that's just the method I use. Or the other alternative is to get something which I think is called a transfer sheet. So this one, the leaf is actually stuck to the sheet and you literally put it down like that, peel the sheet away, and voila, it's left there nice and flat, and it's a little bit easier to apply, I suppose. So I've actually already made some samples, but for demonstration purposes, this is how you apply the leaf. It's very nice and easy. This is aluminium I've got here, which is a loose leaf. So I'm just going to take it out like that. Oh, I've ripped it. Oh well. Oh. Yeah, ripped it more. Oh well. There you go. Take it out like that, and I'm just going to plonk it on, to be honest. Let's see. Oh, going to get all sorts of creases going on probably, but oh well. There you go. So it goes on like that. And then what we have here is a gilder's mop, is what I want to say. It probably isn't, but on the end of here is squirrel hair, which is very nice and soft. And you simply push it down into the adhesive like that. There you go. So yeah, we're getting a few creases and stuff over it, but oh well. Just keep burnishing it out with the brush. There you go. And then you can get a second leaf. Oh my lord, this is not going well. There's a bit of moisture at the bottom, so it's kind of a bit stuck there. And if you've got some sort of funky business like this going on, you can literally just lay the leaf over it. Oh, there you go, put it down like that. And then as you go over it, it's going to stick to all those areas where that size is. And if you give it a little bit more aggression, it's going to peel away all that excess and fill in all of those gaps. And there you go, you're left with a metallic surface on a bit of wood. You want to resist sort of tearing it off like this because you're just going to end up peeling it away from the adhesive, ideally. Just brush it away. There you go, you sort of get the idea. Now that surface is all nice and metallic. So let me get my samples that I prepared earlier. So what I've done is gone ahead and made 3 samples. We've got a copper one with red paint below it. We've got a silver one, and there's a copper one with no red paint below it, just the plywood. Now I would just like to reiterate here that I am not an expert on gilding whatsoever, so these results are pretty, they're not very professional, but we're going to make do with what we got anyway. So now we're going to apply the chemical on here to see what sort of crazy patterns we can get going on. So I've got some lukewarm water here, not boiling, just sort of the temperature that you get out your tap, basically. Can I just still... Yeah, I can just about still dip my finger in it, but if I held it there for too long, it would burn a bit. Now this stuff that I've got here is called Liver of Sulphur Gel. And if any of you are familiar with the smell of sulphur, or for those of you that don't know the smell of sulphur, just think of a like proper eggy fart. That's what this smells of. It stinks. Like this workshop is going to be uninhabitable by the end of this. It's disgusting. Right, so lukewarm water, and we're going to mix a bit of the eggy fart with it. I can't remember what it was called in David Mark's video. I think it was potash sulphureted maybe. But I couldn't get hold of that in the UK, and I think I got this off eBay or Amazon or something like that. So link will be in the description if you'd like to buy it. We need to mix it. Oh my! Need to mix this with the water. Oh, it's gone all jelly-like on the bottom. Oh. So you don't have to do this with lukewarm water, but the warmer the liquid that you apply to it, the quicker the reaction is going to be. Or at least in my experiments, that's what happened. Oh my Lord, this is disgusting. Right. So it's like very liquidy Marmite, and I put that in there and just stir it round. Now I think it does say on here how much you need. Per 355 millilitres you need 1 teaspoon, so it's probably going to be another dip of this. Okay. Need to remember that this is a workshop measuring jug. I don't fancy having eggy flavoured cakes from here on. So, oh my Lord, that... Whew, proper whiffy. Get a backing board underneath this so I don't get an eggy workbench. And with a brush, we're going to very carefully apply it to each of these surfaces. Now, I have found that when you're applying it to the silver, for some reason it's a lot more fragile than other metals such as copper and bronze and things like that. The silver, I don't know why, but it has a tendency to lift up if you kind of brush it on too vigorously. So you want to be very gentle here with it. But I'm going to start with the copper first. So you don't need much on there, just sort of get it on there. And I can see that it's starting to do a little bit already. Here we go, look at that, you see it going? Might be able to see the colours being formed. And as soon as you want to stop the reaction, you simply dab it with cloth like that. So we're going to try and take it a bit further than that. Now I have no doubt that there'll be other versions of different chemicals and things like that that will allow you to turn the copper into blue and maybe greens and things like that. This one tends to turn it like blacky purple sort of colour, which looks pretty cool. There we go. Right, so that being a little bit too vigorous, and it has pulled up the leaf there. So yeah, just be very wary of that. So there you go. I think I'll just stop the reaction there. I've probably taken it a bit too far, but oh well. So there you go. Pop it on there. And just be very careful that you're not wiping it or anything like that, because again, you're just going to strip the leaf on there. Yeah, probably took that one a bit too far, but there are some pretty cool colours in that. There's some nice blues and pinks in the areas between the black, which looks quite nice. So for this next one, I'm going to try and stop it at that stage. But we're going to do the silver next. Now this is something that I did on my first bass guitar, and you can get it to turn like a blue colour, sort of a teal blue, and oh, it looks amazing. It's going to not do anything for ages, and then it will start turning yellow, and then eventually it will start turning blue after that. So we've got a bit of a waiting game going on here. So I'll probably leave that to do its thing for now, and we'll get working on the other copper one. I'll just film this as it has its reaction. It looks so cool. But watch how sensitive it is. Oh, so you can just watch these areas slowly build up as well. You can see a different effect already. Just from leaving it on there, you get more of a sort of spotty pattern going on it, as opposed to the one before where I just sort of brushed it on. There you go, right, we're getting purples and stuff down this bottom corner. So let's stop it there. Take it a bit further on this side. Okay, we've got blues and stuff going on up here, so we'll dab that. Stop the reaction from going on, and a bit down here now. And it's happening midway, so we just need to sort out the middle now. Took the middle too far, that's just gone black again, but there's some nice areas surrounding it. Just got to be very quick with it. Here we go, this is quite a good method. Just instantly stopping it as soon as it goes blue, in small patches at a time. Cool, so it looks slightly different to the one we had before. Got more of a droplet pattern over it, and I've managed to keep some more of the blues and things around the edges. It depends how it catches the light, really. It might look terrible from your angle, but hopefully in the editing stages I'll be able to pick up on some of those cool blues and stuff that I can see in here. So let's keep working on the silver one. Oh, right, started stripping off leaf now, so we've got to be careful. Very, very fragile this. Got to be very careful with it. So this is exactly why I painted under it when I did this before, because I didn't want to expose any wood below, but instead you'd be exposing quite vibrant colours and things like that, so it looks pretty cool. But you can see the colour of the silver has sort of started turning a nice stale urine colour, and I can see the first bit of blue being formed down the bottom here actually. Oh, I've just stripped it off. So, oh yeah, it's turning purple here as well. You can see it going a little bit darker. So we need to watch out now. I think I'll just leave it as it is, let it do its thing, and we'll just wait to stop the reaction. Just very gently start drying up some of that liquid to prevent the reaction. I'm pretty happy with where this is going to go. I know it'll go a little bit further beyond this point, just while the remaining liquid evaporates on there. So let's see. Oh, it's looking cool. So let's give it just one more sheet just to make sure that reaction has well and truly stopped, or else the silver kind of turns like this metallic grey colour, and yeah, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look grey. Great. It does look grey. It doesn't look great though. There we go. That looks pretty sweet. Apart from all the areas where I've accidentally stripped the leaf off. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there are some beautiful colours that have been formed on that. But there you go, that is gilding with patination, chemicals, or I don't really know if there's a proper word for that process, to be honest. Artificial patinaing, I suppose. But yeah, it gives some absolutely beautiful results. It's a process that I definitely want to delve in more with in the future, like get different chemicals and things to create different effects, work with creating different patterns and things like that, because you can make some really nice ornamental things with this sort of finish, and maybe even use it to accent certain areas on furniture and stuff like that. I don't know, it's obviously limitless. But considering you can turn a bit of palette wood into a metallic aged looking vase, I think this is something that everyone should have a play with, definitely, because it is a lot of fun. Now, there are a lot of other things that you can do with the gilding process, including adding resists and things like that. So as one example, because I don't want to steal all of David Mark's fire with this, but when he applied the adhesive for the gilding, before putting the leaf on, he actually put a fishnet below it. So then when you put the leaf over that, you peel away the fishnet and you get sort of like a diamond pattern on there. That's called a resist, and there's lots of other things in his DVD that he kind of shows you that you can do to create different effects, but I'm not going to list them in here because it's his DVD, and a link to it is in the description. He has no idea I'm doing this. He probably doesn't even know who I am, but if you do happen to buy it, or you do happen to look at some of his courses where he teaches this sort of thing, tell him I sent you, because apart from anything, I want to know why the leaf is stripping off the adhesive as I'm applying it, because that didn't happen in his video. So in fact, if any of you have any idea why that's happening as well, please let me know. But yeah, there you go, that is part 1 to experimental / alternative wood finishing. I will see you in the next video.